Hello, everybody. John here again for another top 10 video games of the previous year. Of course, we're sitting here in 2026, January 29th, 2026, to be exact. And what we're looking at here is yet another 1 to 2 month delay in video games of the year, which I actually kind of like because it gives you time to ruminate on any late bloomers that come out in December, of which there were a couple last year, actually. But I had also just moved over Thanksgiving and got quite sick over Thanksgiving and was settling in, and then the holidays started and then the new year started, which meant a lot of other new stuff that started. And this is coming out at a time when I'm able to get it out, essentially. But there were a lot of good games, so I'm looking forward to talking about what did make it onto my top 10 list. But I want to start with some notables. Actually, I want to start with some notables in the beginning here to sort of talk about a few of these games that didn't make my top 10 list that one might expect to make my top 10 list, if you know me well. There also are a few on here I just want to make sure I get to talk about, even though they're not on my top 10 list. I have them in my notes under a category that is just simply titled Notables. So we'll go ahead and start with Tempest Rising. Tempest Rising is a RTS game in the vein of Command and Conquer, essentially. Sort of modern Command and Conquer, where there is no longer a true, actual Command and Conquer TM anymore because EA killed it. So Tempest Rising comes out, and I played Tempest Rising, and I played a couple of other RTSs, both, that were in early access, and went back to some older ones in 2025. Hit up the Age of Empires 4, hit up Age of Mythology, and I think what I've come to realize and what Tempest Rising really drove home for me in 2025 is that RTS games are kind of just not for me anymore. Like, the way they're designed these days and how fast they move and the hotkey extravaganza and pianoing you're expected to do just to be able to play a game like Tempest Rising basically renders these types of games as single-player only games for me. I just can't. I'm at an age now, I'm 37, where, my reflexes, and more importantly, my desire to engage in a game where your brain has to be on, running at 120%, 100% of the time you play it is... I just don't want that in my gaming anymore. The older I get, the more I feel like I have to be like that in my day-to-day life, and I just don't have the energy and the wherewithal to, slam online matches in Tempest Rising over and over and over and over and over again like I might have done when I was younger. So Tempest Rising is on the notable, and I want to talk about it list because it's the catalyst for me realizing that, this genre that was a super big part of my life when I was a teen, probably not for me anymore. Which I guess is a good realization to have, but also kind of sad. I still play things like Age of Empires or Age of Mythology with my best friend, and we can still have a good time with that because it's just the two of us. We're versing AI. We can kind of go at our own pace, determine the settings for the game that make it comfortable for us to play. But the days of me, no-lifing RTS games I think they're gone. They're just gone. They're gone and they're done. That's kind of all there is to it, honestly. One of the other games, there's 5 games on this list. Game number 2 on the notable list was Megabonk. And it's on here because I think it's going to be on a lot of other top 10 lists of the year, or like top 15 or top 20, top 25 lists. And I have an active dislike of this game. I don't like its humor. I don't like its design. I don't like the movement in the game that everyone else thinks is so great. I think is complete and total garbage. I like very little about this game. About the only thing that I do like is its visuals. Big fan of anything that looks vaguely like PS1 and 64 era graphics. That's my jam. So I love the look of it, but everything else about this game I have an active dislike for. So you are not going to find it on my top 10 list. Number 3 on this list is Monster Hunter Wilds. You are also not going to find Monster Hunter Wilds on this top 10 list, which may come as a big surprise to people that know me well, simply because Monster Hunter has made, and its expansions, G-Rank expansions, have made the list basically every year I started doing these since Monster Hunter Rise. I'm a huge fan and have a huge bias towards like for these games. I don't think Monster Hunter Wilds is a bad game. I think it's a bad Monster Hunter game. I like playing it. You know, I like hunting monsters. I like crafting gear. I like feeling fucking cool and awesome, and you know, fighting big monsters with my friends. That's very, very fun. But when it comes to some of the things that, in a lot of people's opinion, more importantly in my opinion, since this is my top 10 list, that like the things that make Monster Hunter games special, this game just kind of feels like not a sanitation. It hasn't like sanitized or scrubbed away, I think deliberately, things that people think are special about the Monster Hunter formula. And it hasn't sanitized it, but it has introduced, and here's what I mean by that, it has introduced a design philosophy of putting more frictionless gameplay into the series than in previous entries. And I think in the case of Monster Hunter Wilds, the designers mistook accessibility for like a reason for a casual audience to get into Monster Hunter. I think Monster Hunter Wilds it's too frictionless when it comes to the Monster Hunter formula. The thing that people and Monster Hunter fans like about Monster Hunter are not, you know, sort of the decibel on those things is not very high in Monster Hunter Wilds. About the only thing that is still high in decibels when it comes to, you know, the Monster Hunter formula is hunting monsters. But everything else, like I don't find it to be a terribly difficult game. I don't find the new monster designs to be particularly interesting. The loop of getting out there and hunting monsters is so frictionless that it feels almost meaningless. Like you lose track of why you're doing what you're doing. Whereas other Monster Hunter games, because the games were harder, because the crafting demanded that you engage in harder hunts or, you know, approach specific event hunts, you know, maybe differently than you would just a normal hunt. You were having to like set goals and make goals about, you know, which piece to craft next, what kind of sets you wanted, and you still have to do that in Monster Hunter Wilds, but because they've removed so many things in the game that make you stop and kind of take stock of what your character needs or is working toward at any given time, so much of the game's game loop and design is in service of just getting players out into the field and into hunts and keeping them in that loop ad nauseum until they're done with their play session. And I think that's what makes it feel a little weird, and like it's lost a little bit of the friction around coming in from a hunt, checking your materials, doing some item crafting, seeing if you can upgrade weapons and such. That used to happen between hunts or between every couple hunts. If you knew you were looking for a particular piece and you were just going to slam this investigation over and over again 3 times until it was gone, then you go back to base and maybe spend 30 minutes, okay, what did I get from those hunts? Did I get what I needed? No, okay. The loop, it was a little more broken up, and it was a little more prone to friction. Because you didn't always accomplish your goals, or you didn't always get what you needed. In Monster Hunter Wilds, the push to kind of keep the player in the hunts over and over and over again, I think it speaks to this almost, live service philosophy of like it wants as much of your time as possible, and it feels like a game designed for short-term attention spans and not long-term attention spans. And I just didn't find it as engaging and enjoyable as previous Monster Hunter titles that I've played, especially the last 2. World and Rise were many people's first introductions, to the franchise. My first introduction was Monster Hunter was 3 was 3 or was 3 try back on the Wii, but it's not in the top 10 list. We'll see what happens with the G rank expansion. I hope it's really good, but we'll see. The last 2, we'll say number 4 here is Elden Ring Night Rain. This came on and off my top 10 list many times over the course of the last month or so. And sometime around the beginning of January, my husband and my best friend, the 3 of us kind of went back to it and, played the new DLC, played, the new characters, the new map, the new bosses, the everything. And my husband kept playing it far longer after my best friend and I stopped because we had kind of done all the new content. I have almost 400 hours in Elden Ring Night Rain, and I love this game. I think it's a really brilliant idea to combine, From Software design sensibilities with this kind of run-based, the ring, Fortnite, the ring closes around you kind of extraction shooter type design philosophies and design principles. That's a really interesting and brilliant combination, and for the most part it works. It's a really good game. I'm not so sure it's a really good roguelike, but it's also full of way too much bullshit for me to put it on the top 10 list. Like, there are points during playing this game where I want to just, rip my kneecaps out. It's infuriating. Some bosses are too big for the, little arenas they're put on in the map, and you get, huge dragons that are, stuck on this weird rock outcropping, and then they're, clipping in and out of it, and you can't hit them, and your character is standing on it all weird. You get, the little orbs that drop when you kill a boss that let you pick a level up. Sometimes they'll, drop inside of buildings or drop off the level even if you kill a boss near the edge. You have, really weird and annoying things where Sites of Grace don't activate, in time, and don't take your button inputs. There's a weird lag there. They say they fixed that, but I've definitely run into it multiple times. There's a lot of bugs that exist in characters and character movesets, and character mechanics, whether that be, Guardian's special ability. There were some weird instances of like Raider's skill. He could be pushed out of it by certain boss moves, which is particularly infuriating because that skill is basically supposed to make you immortal, especially if it's fully charged, and like immovable. But it's just there's too many points. And friction is going to be my 2025 gaming word of the year, let me tell you, because we're going to talk about that again in a couple games that are actually in the top 10. There's too many points of friction in the act of playing the game that introduce way too many little like micro frustrations, and sometimes they're bigger than micro frustrations, that make playing it not always a very pleasant thing to do. Or to be doing. And I'm not talking about like, oh, you died to a boss. Like, it's a fucking From Software game. That's going to happen. I'm talking about, moment-to-moment things that indicate it's just a poorly made or poorly thought out product and game in some ways. Like, the level of communication that you are allowed in the game. I'm not asking for voice chat or anything like that, but it needs a little bit more of that. It needs to be a little more thoughtful about the player experience of, like the game is already hard. So things like huge dragons clipping in and out of levels and you losing the ability to do a critical hit on it because its face is stuck in the ground because its model and its rigging is so fucked up it can't exist in the part of the map it's trying to exist in properly. That kind of stuff is infuriating, and it directly impacts the game because things like critical hits are a mechanic that actually matter in a game like Elden Ring Night Rain. And so when it feels like you've been cheated out of being able to get that because of like a dragon being, face fucking the ground at a 90-degree angle or some shit because his ass is like standing on a rock or something, but the rest of his body is on the ground. That kind of stuff feels really, really bad. And so it's not going to make the top 10 list for a cumulative number of those reasons. But I spent a lot of time with it. I really love the game. I just cannot in good conscience put it in my top 10 list because there's just too many instances of those little points of friction becoming frustrations that make it a not fun game to play. The last game in the notables before we get to the top 10 is Civilization 7. I have probably the most hours accumulated in Sid Meier's Civilization games of any franchise I've played. If you add up all of the hours I've played Civ games, we're probably looking at like 8,000 hours across Civ 4, 5, 6, and 7. The bulk of those, most of those probably come from 5 and 6 at this point. I have a little bit in 3, not very much in 2, and I've never played 1. But Civ 7 is... I see what they're going for. Like breaking apart the leaders and the civilizations and having this age up or era mechanic that have its own particular victory paths they call legacies. Like picking Catherine as your leader and then choosing a different civilization in every era. I like the idea. I liked it in Humankind. I like it in Civ 7. But some of the issues that they set out to solve around keeping players engaged at every point of the game, whether that be the early game, the mid game, or the late game, their solution to that problem didn't work. It didn't work at all. It just introduced a whole new set of similar issues as existed prior to them implementing this new version of the era system, or ages, I think as they call them in Civ 7. The design is too loose. It's a little too, not misguided, but it's a little too, it feels almost like it's not confident of the choices it's made. And so it has some mechanics and it has some systems in it that like hedge the bets around certain design choices they made and try to appeal to the widest possible audience, instead of just being like, no, this is the design choice we made and we're just going to let it stand, and being okay with some people not liking it. That they went with the former, and I think that's to the game's detriment, because it doesn't feel like a game that was confidently designed, and as a result, there's a lot of there's a lot of like just clicking the end turn button to get to the next thing. There's a lot of checklisting, to-do lists that exist in Civ 7. There's not a lot of variety in the gameplay. With some of the more recent leaders there are, because they actually have a little asymmetry in their design, which is intentional, which is why I've said from the beginning, Civilization's future is rooted in asymmetry. It's rooted in the Endless Legend and the Ensemble, not the Ensemble Studios, Jesus Christ. It's rooted in the Endless Legend and the Endless Space Amplitude Studios kind of approach to symmetry, asymmetry, and 4X design. And I think they just need to embrace that and be okay with that, instead of trying to create a game that's going to want to capture sort of the... I don't think people understand how big of a game Civ 6 was. Like, when you add up all of its PC sales and console sales, that game was sold like 27 million copies. It was insanely popular, and it still has more players every day than Civ 7 does on Steam charts. It still sometimes it's cracking. It might even be cracking still top 25 right now, with 20,000, players kind of consistently peaking at around 55,000 on PC, which for a 4X game is crazy. It's crazy and it's insane. It's very clear that Civ 7 was hoping to kind of catch some of that audience, because Civ 6 was by far the most popular game, Civ game, with sort of casual players who might only know of 4X games, or whose only game they play is Civ 6, who had never played another Civ game ever before. So Civ 7, I think it will get there. They clearly are taking a lot of time and thinking about a new approach to Civ 7. It's pretty clear that the team there at Firaxis is going back to the drawing board on a few things. They've said as much. My gut tells me we're nearing... They said there's going to be some sort of big announcements maybe in February, after the most recent sort of rebalance patch they released, and it's about time for them to announce the first sort of big mechanical expansion to Civ 7. We'll see what it ends up becoming. Civ games typically are games that get better as time goes on, not get worse. So who knows? Maybe we'll talk about it again next year. We'll see. So now we'll go ahead and move into the top 10, and of course we'll start at number 10. You guys should know how this works by now. I don't consider early access games. The game has to have come out in the year 2025. Early access games that come into 1.0 in 2025 are considered. There are a few on here that were early access games, that are eligible in 2025 because that's the year they came out in 1.0. But yeah, the game it has to have come out last year. I don't consider games that are currently in early access in 2025 into 2026. And that's pretty much the only criteria, Oh, and I have to have played them. There's a lot of games that very well could have made my top 10 list that I just did not play last year. Haste, There's a couple more sort of smaller indie titles that I wanted to play that I didn't get to play, like The Wandering Village, Shape of Dreams I didn't get to play very much of, Dead Zone Rogue I didn't get to play very much of, the Rogue Prince of Persia game, the game made by the ex-Dead Cells studio members, Fantasy Life I. Those are all games I wish I would have played or played more of, but they won't. They weren't up for consideration because I didn't feel confident that I had played enough of them, or I didn't play them at all. So that's the deal. We'll start at number 10 with Hades 2. Hades 2, the latest Supergiant game, the first time that studio has ever made a sequel, actually. And that's notable because I'm pretty sure Greg Kasavin has been on record saying at some point in the studio's existence that, not that they wouldn't commit to making sequels for their games. I mean, they've made banger after banger, Bastion, Transistor, Pyre, the first Hades game. There's one other that I'm forgetting at the moment. But people have asked for sequels to their games, basically every game they make, and their answer has always been, well, if we feel like we need to make a sequel and have more to say, then we will. And they never have until Hades 2. So that in and of itself is kind of notable just as context for this game, because Supergiant would not, I don't think, I've met Greg Kasavin and a few of the people who work at that studio back when I was doing game journalism. Kasavin he used to work at GameSpot, whose offices are, down there off of 3rd Street or 4th Street or whatever street it is in Soma. It would not have been made if they didn't have more to say. And I think that's reflected in almost every aspect of this game's design, whether it's the tarot card system or the new weapons and how combat feels, the sprint. It cannot be overstated the degree to which the character's ability to sprint in this game changes its moment-to-moment action-based gameplay. The characters, even the art, like the way the art is treated for the same characters that existed in Hades 1 to Hades 2, demonstrates an evolution or a sort of recontextualization of their approach to these characters, both in the writing, in the art, in the design, in the music of the game, in every aspect of it. It's a really brilliant game. It's a really good sequel. I think I prefer it to Hades 1. Hades 1 feels a bit, stodgy is the wrong word. Hades 1 feels a bit stiff, I think. Going back to Hades 1, I might prefer some of the weapons more in Hades 1, but the actual act of playing Hades 1 feels more stiff than Hades 2. Hades 1 compared to 2, very linear. It feels like it has a pretty straight path through it, the start, the end. You know what you're going to be doing from point A to point B. And Hades 2 is a little more meandering. It's a little more open. It's a little more take time, slow down, chill, have a bath with Moros. Those sorts of things. And I love it. I love the game. I love the boss fights. I love the music. Everything about it. It's a really good game. If you've been on the fence about picking it up, or it's one that you missed, definitely. If you played and liked Hades 1, there's zero reason for you not to play Hades 2. Number 9 is Ball X Pit, or are we supposed to say Ball Cross Pit? Who knows? This is an indie game that came out sort of later-ish in the year, and it's really good. My husband lost his life to this game for a couple weeks. It's very, very simple. There's a meta progression where you're building this town over time. You're adding buildings. You're getting blueprints for buildings and adding them, and some buildings unlock characters for you. Some buildings are resource buildings. You need to collect those resources in order to build other buildings or to get certain upgrades. But the actual playing of the game is, you select a character and you pick a ball to put him into the pit with. And the pit, if you think of it like Tetris, your guy is at the bottom, and then enemies are falling from the top or coming down from the top, marching down from the top, if you will. And you're throwing your balls at them. And eventually you get to a point where, balls do different things, and then you can combine balls to make the balls have, like, multitudinal effects. You can evolve the balls, similar to the evolution system from Vampire Survivors, so that they do even crazier things. And you get to the point in that game where, like, the combinations you can do and, like, some of the character abilities in that game are pretty crazy. But this is an indie game, and it doesn't. I don't know. It feels like really well made, and it's one of those indie games where the idea is so simple that you can't believe it hasn't been done before. And it was just it was executed so perfectly. Like, the designer of this game executed on it so perfectly. It's a virtually frictionless experience. That's one of the things that I really appreciated about it. There's another game on this list that hit that same note for me that we'll talk about a little bit later. You get to a point where you can just turn on autoplay and the game will play the character you pick and the balls you pick for you. You don't even have to do it. It will move the character where it needs to be moved. And at that point, it essentially becomes an idle game. You can turn it into an idle game if you want. That's what my husband did. I don't particularly care for that kind of game myself, so I kept it as a more active experience. But, for me, it was a Steam Deck game. It still is a Steam Deck game. It's still a game I play on the Steam Deck, and it's perfect for that. But if you're looking for a game that has, one, a great art style, two, a surprising lack of depth, but not one that is overwhelming, like, the choices are pretty binary, but there's depth in those binary choices. And something that you can sort of pick up and play for 15 minutes and then, walk away from, it's perfect for that. It's absolutely perfect for that. It's a video gamey kind of video game, and there are a few of those on this list as well that we'll talk about a little bit later. But that's number 9, Ball X Pit, Ball Cross Pit. I'm not sure what the official way to say it is. Number 8 is Absalom. Absalom? Not sure. Absalom, I was not sure that I was going to like Absalom because it is a beat-em-up. It's like a side-scrolling, Streets of Rage, Double Dragon kind of beat-em-up. And I typically don't really care for those kinds of games. However, Absalom combines that sort of mechanical design with a roguelike. And those I really do like. In fact, one might say it's my favorite genre and has been for probably almost a decade at this point. Absalom surprised me. I was not expecting to like this game, but I really, really do. The art style is fantastic. The variation between the 4 characters that you eventually get. You start with 2. You can unlock 2 more. There's a frog wizard. I don't know that I really need to say more than that, honestly, for you to go out and buy this game. There's a frog wizard. And if that doesn't tickle your fancy, there's also a little dwarven guy that punches things and has, like, a gun. Yeah, crazy. Absalom is awesome. Its combat is way more deep than I thought it would be. it's not fighting game levels of deep, but it is much deeper than I thought it would be. The unlocks, the pacing, the meta progression, the roguelike aspects all are done really, really well. I have to make a special mention of the music, which was done by, I believe the name is Gareth Cooker. Let me actually make absolutely sure I know what I'm saying here and look this up, because it's the same guy that did the music for the Ori games. Gareth Cocker. Not sure how to say his last name, but the music is absolutely fantastic and brilliant. It's probably the best video game. Ooh, do I want to say that? I don't know if I can say that, honestly. It is among the best video game music of 2025. We will say that. It's very, very good. The boss fights are really, really awesome. This is a game I would love to play co-op with someone. You can play co-op with someone, but I don't have anyone in my life currently that is interested in playing this game or has this game. But it's really a solid experience, and it's the combination of the beat 'em up with the roguelike that really works and kind of makes it feel like a newer experience in the genre of roguelikes. Like, there are not very many beat 'em up roguelikes out there. You can't argue that, Dead Cells or that Astral Ascent or any of those types of games are beat 'em ups. They're really not. They're much more mechanically complex, and builds, are much more complex than an Absalom, but there's something about the combination of side-scroller beat-em-up with roguelike that actually really works, and I suspect Absalom is going to inspire a lot of, not necessarily clones, but a lot of games like it are probably going to come out in the next 2 to 3 years. It wouldn't surprise me if there are other studios or designers that are inspired by what Absalom did, and they go and they make their own version of it, and we start seeing more of those in a couple of years. So that's number 8. Number 7 is Sonic Racing Crossworlds. Holy shit, guys. A Sonic game is on my top 10 list. This was the best kart racer that came out in 2025, and I will fucking fight you over that if you don't agree. If you want to fight me, if you think, listen here. If you think Mario Kart was the best kart racer that came out in 2025, you need to go get your fucking head examined, okay? Because the best kart racer that came out in 2025 was Sonic Racing Crossworlds, hands down. Sonic Team Racing was a good game. The game that came out after it, which was, I think, another racing team title or something like that, was a little worse than the previous one, but not bad. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe still ate its lunch, though. Mario Kart World, in my opinion, it's good, but it's not really Mario Kart. And Sonic Racing Crossworlds hits all of the notes I need my kart racer to hit. It's just such a joy to play. The track design is fantastic. The guest characters, the collaborations, the other Sega characters they've managed to bring in to the game. The Capcom characters that have made it in over the years are also very cool. Sonic Racing Crossworld's big thing is every lap of the track. The first lap is done, sort of as usual. The second lap is an interstitial course. It's like you drive, whoever is the race leader, as they are ending the first lap of a race, they're picking a new world to race in the second lap of the race. There's, let's say, 3 laps total. And so the leader of the race picks one of 2 worlds for the second lap to be on, but you don't necessarily drive a full lap in that second lap of whatever course is chosen. those courses are slightly tweaked and like refit versions of other courses. And so you're sort of racing like on the second lap, like a mini lap of another course that's slightly redesigned. And then you come back to the sort of original course that you started on for the third lap, right? And that ends up actually being really cool. It's a really cool idea. The way the transition happens is like you would think, oh my god, this is going to kill my frames. It's going to, be all like weird, and weird things are going to happen, and carts are going to fly all over the place. But they don't really. It's pretty smooth. It has like way more cart customization and stat, jiggering that I didn't expect it to have than the previous Sonic racing games. Like you can get, if you are a person who likes unlocks, let me tell you, Sonic Racing Cross, you can grind the shit out of this game. You really can. You can grind and grind and grind and grind. There's so many things to unlock, whether it's like sticker decals or new car parts or new carts or new titles, or there's just tons and tons and tons of stuff. I've also really enjoyed the events that they do as well, where, you race online and it's pretty frictionless, like you're not, even if you finish poorly, you're not like, it's not a struggle, like you're still getting something, even if you don't win races, you're still getting points toward this little like free event pass they give you that will unlock cool additional things for characters to equip, whether it's like a special kind of like aura for their character, or a new horn sound, or a Minecraft themed title or something like that. It's kind of celebrating a lot of video games, and especially a lot of older video games, which I really appreciate. And it's just fun. It's just a fun game. Its sense of speed is fantastic. The items are cool. The characters are, like the Sonic roster, the Sonic characters, I have no opinion on. I'm not part of the Sonic fandom. But I like the characters that are in there. I like the rival system where every race, you're sort of assigned a rival, and then the race begins with you and your rival trash talking one another, and it ends with you, if you beat him, you're like giving him the deal, and then if he beats you, he's giving you the deal, and it's fun. It's fun. I really enjoyed Sonic Racing Cross Worlds. It's just simply a joy to play. Best cart game that came out in 2025. Number 6 is a game called Mortal Sin. I'm not sure how to explain this game other than to say it is a run-based, highly stylized in the art direction, roguelike. It's class-based, but the classes and the combat mechanics are quite complicated. It has a really high skill ceiling, and I think the look of this game is not going to be for everyone. But in the sense of it being a roguelike, it is exactly what you would think it is. You pick a map, you pick a class, you walk through a portal, you have the map, stage 1, 1-1, and you go into one room and you do the objective in that room, and then a door opens and you go into the next room and you do the objective in that room, and so on and so forth. This entire time, you're sort of accumulating opportunities to add modifiers or get new weapons or put new equipment on your character class that you chose that change the way you play or slightly alter the class's mechanics or modify the class's mechanics in such a way that the way you play changes. But the thing that really sets Mortal Sin apart from other, actually there are really no other games like it if I'm being completely honest, is its focus on combat mechanics and its art style. Again, I don't think the look of it is going to be for everyone, and I think they knew that, which is why they let you in the options basically make it look like a normal game. I'm not even sure how to describe the look of the game other than to say it looks like if you were looking through the eyes of a demon from the ninth circle of hell that was also wearing sunglasses. Like, there's this really weird, grimy, black mist that covers everything, and there's a lot of reds and blues and orange fleshy colors in the color palette. And it looks very off-putting and very disturbing, and I think it's like that's the point. It's supposed to look that way. It's supposed to be stylized that way. But I think people that have issues with like motion sickness or they have trouble measuring spatial distances and stuff like that, if it's a darker area or something, might have trouble playing it. And I think that's probably why they put a bunch of visual options in the game for you to basically just make it look like a regular game with regular graphics and regular colors. But that's not what it looks like when you first turn the game on by default. The thing that makes it so good, though, is each of the classes really asks you to master that class's particular like combat sensibility, or like what that character wants to be doing in the moment-to-moment gameplay. It's a first-person game, but it asks you to have like a fighting game level understanding of combos and how combos work and move sets. Like, every class has a move set for it that you, in order to really master it, need to know. Like, you need to come to grips with that class's move set in order to perform well and do well. But let me tell you, when you do master a class's moveset and you understand all of its combo strings and you understand how animation canceling works in Mortal Sin, this game goes from yeah, it's fine. I cut the head off the demon and the little blood spurted out. It goes from just oh yeah, it's a roguelike to like, oh, this is a lot more complicated and like interesting than I thought it was initially. And the game doesn't really tell you that it's important either. That's the thing. Like, it kind of on the tutorial character alludes to combos existing, but until you start unlocking the other characters and playing with the other characters, you don't really understand the degree to which that is important within the game. And Mortal Sin was like completely surprising how much mechanical depth this game had to me. If you are someone who likes fighting games, or you're someone who's like maybe tangentially interested or like kind of watch fighting games and are like, oh man, I wish I was good at fighting games, Mortal Sin is probably a really good game for you to play because there's no pressure there. Like, you're not fighting another person, you're not like beating your head against an arcade boss over and over and over again, trying to get the Ken ending or whatever. Because it's a roguelike, it's structured in a way that, like, when you die, you're supposed to die. Like, you'll still be making progress in other areas if you die. But it will kind of allow you to dig into a game that has, like, character or class movesets and combo systems and let you see if you actually maybe like those kinds of games. And if you do, maybe you should try out, fighting games, and maybe you'll have a good time with them. But for me personally, Mortal Sin, awesome. Loved it. I need to play more of it. There are a ton of classes I haven't mastered combat with or even played. But the way it looks, the way it plays, its emphasis on combat mechanics, it's very special within the genre of roguelikes. There's not really anything else out there that is like Mortal Sin, and I would highly recommend you check it out. Number 5 is Arc Raiders. I was completely. There's a game like this every year that comes along where like I heard about it at announcement. I learned what kind of game it was. Oh yeah, it's an extraction shooter. I completely write it off. I like don't follow it, don't care about it, don't watch the trailers for the next 2 years, and then it comes out. I see it's out, on Steam, and I'm like, okay, you know what? It's $40. Let's give it a try. Let's see what Arc Raiders is all about. So I bought Arc Raiders on a whim and played it, loaded into my first match, didn't have any idea what the fuck I was doing. This is post-tutorial, like my first real match. Found my way to this apartment, and I was just digging through this apartment on the first map. I think the pink one's on the far side of the map. I think there's two of them, sort of split. One's on a slightly higher elevation or level than the other one. And I was going through just looting everything. I was just loot gobbling everything. And I saw another player. And I kind of let him go and do his thing, but then we ran into each other as we were coming out of the apartments. I was looting one. He went into the one I had already looted. And as I was coming out of the second one I had looted, he was coming out of the first one that I had already looted, and we ran into each other. And he immediately on voice chat, he was like, don't shoot, friendly. And we got to chatting, and he was just looking for a specific thing, and it just so turned out that I had looted that thing he was looking for from the apartment building that I was just in. So I dropped it for him, gave it to him, and off he went on his merry way, and we never saw each other again the entire rest of the map. And that was the first time that I had really ever had an experience like that in an extraction shooter. My experience with extraction shooters / battle royale kind of games, has played Fortnite, hated it, played PUBG, hated it, played Escape from Tarkov, hated it, played, there's been a couple weird, there was like one with dragons or some shit that I played and hated and didn't like that either. Didn't like the Battlerite one, that they designed from the same team that did Battlerite. I just don't like the genre. But Arc Raiders, because the sort of neutral framing of the game or the context of the game is not like necessarily one that's adversarial, it's notable as a game in the genre where there are a good number of players who prefer to cooperate than be competitive. And I think one of the main reasons that is the introduction of ARC, which are these AI robots. And I say AI, that's a very important part of this, because their AI actually learns from what players do to the world enemies as they're playing a match. So the setup for this is you load into a game. The story is that humanity, fought ARC. ARC are these robots. They showed up. They started fucking our shit up real bad. We beat them back once. They came back twice, even harder. And humanity kind of fell into a period of underground existence. And there's a portion of the population that sort of resists ARC or goes topside, and as an act of resistance, sort of scavenge materials to bring back below the surface for the rest of humanity to continue to survive. They are called raiders, hence Arc Raiders. But when you're on a map and there's sort of an additional world element that is threatening to you, that is an active threat to all players, it's interesting the way that, the psychology that goes on in this game doesn't really exist in a lot of other games in the genre. I won't say at all, because there are still games that allow player-to-player interactions, even though, Escape from Tarkov doesn't have the PvE element necessarily in the same way that Arc Raiders does. And there's a lot about that game that's sort of built around this idea of scarcity that encourage you to kill other players and take their shit. Arc Raiders gives you the opportunity to engage in that style of play, but it's not strictly necessary, and it's not encouraged as a necessity for survival in the same way that it is in other games in the genre. There are so many different interactions I've had in Arc Raiders, and even the 70, 80 hours I've spent with it so far, that I mean, I might forget some of them eventually, but there's a couple in particular that really stand out that'll probably be with me for a long time. I've never played a game like it before. I've never really gotten into a game like it before. I think it's probably I don't feel like I want to suddenly go play Fortnite or suddenly go play PUBG. There's something about the way it's designed and the way the player versus world stuff is set up that even when I die or get murked in a match, I'm not necessarily mad or bummed because okay, cool, yeah, I lost some gun, I lost some materials. I can go get that stuff again. And the inclusion of free kits is really kind of a game changer, I think, for a lot of more casual players who might not want to grind up a stash of super ridiculous, awesome weaponry and stuff to take out with him into the field. There's a balance that's well struck in Arc Raiders between I've got nothing to lose and I've got everything to lose. I think they really understood where to put the weight at just the right place in that spectrum to not tilt it too far in one direction. And there's so much about it that is so thoughtfully designed. It's very impressive. Everything from the sound to the game design to the system designs to the map design, the visual elements that exist to introduce either points of friction visually, a snowstorm rolling in, the map events that can take place that you can sort of trigger. It's all it all works in sort of confluence with everything else to create a symphony of aspects, a symphony of play that really put you in the experience. They really locate you, the player, in that world and kind of really ask you to be there in a way that other games in this genre don't. And it's just fucking awesome, man. It's really unique. And what I like about this year's top 10 list is that already, I'm at number 5, and I would have never necessarily thought that Absalom, Arc Raiders, or Sonic Racing Crossworlds would be at this list, and I am glad I kind of pushed myself out of my comfort zone a little bit this year to play games that at sort of judging the cover I might not necessarily spring for or even actively have sort of a distaste for games in the genre. And I would encourage you guys to do the same, because it can lead to instances like this with Arc Raiders where it well and truly is a play experience in a game that I really loved from last year. It's so unique. I had never played anything or experienced anything like it before, and I look really forward to seeing where that game goes in the future. Number 4 is Doom Dark Ages. So Doom the Dark Ages is it's a pretty interesting game when you view it in the context of a continuation from Doom 2016 to Doom Eternal to Doom Dark Ages. Those games represent an evolution in the design of Doom from game to game that players either really like from game to game, or they really don't like from game to game. In other words, starting with Doom Eternal, I think the design choices they've made start to be controversial. Is not the right word. Maybe some people would use the word controversial, but they start to be choices that either really pull some Doom players in, as in, like, yeah, this is exactly the evolution that the series needed to stay fresh and feel cool and alive, and others that play it and go, this is not Doom. This has never been in Doom. This has never been a thing in Doom. It doesn't feel like Doom. Playing it doesn't feel like Doom, and I don't like it. And so I think Doom the Dark Ages is largely the same. Like, it follows that same pattern of when it came out, it reviewed okay, but when you look at discussions people were having about it online, either in forums or on Reddit or on Instagram or on TikTok or, wherever people are talking about video games, players seemed fairly, I would say mostly positive, but there were definitely people who were like, I just have no interest in this, and as a Doom fan, this is just not for me. And, Doom 2016 was kind of a reimagining of kind of really basic Doom, regular Doom design principles. Like boomstick shooter, blast with the shotgun, here's the rocket launcher, here's the BFG, kind of modern take on those older design principles of Doom. And then Doom Eternal added a lot of movement-based mechanics and gameplay to Doom that some people loved and some people didn't. And the map design got, as a result, a lot more fucky, a lot more vertical. The arenas were not just flat stairs, pillar, hide behind pillar, so on and so forth. Doom the Dark Ages kind of takes that movement from Doom Eternal and puts it in the context of, well, what if we gave Doom Guy a shield and a melee weapon, and we made killing elite enemies or boss enemies or mini-boss enemies more about the fight with that enemy. Like, never mind the arena, never mind all of the other enemies spawning in, shooting you all the time. What if for between, 3 and 9 seconds, you were just doing battle, like mono-e-mono battle with those enemies? And I'm not saying the game, has this, really complicated production, where it zooms in on you and the enemy. This is all happening naturally over the course of just, being on a map and playing as the Doom Guy. But the introduction of the shield and the melee weapons really gives Doom the Dark Ages a little bit more of a... sedentary is the wrong word, because it's not that you're not moving, but it gives it a more... Oh, am I about to say this? I think this is a very overused term in gaming, but a much more grounded experience than previous Doom games, where jumping around and flinging yourself from this to that and, sliding and shifting your movement and those sorts of things. There's still a little bit of that in Doom the Dark Ages, but it's a much more I'm going to choose the area I'm going to fight, and I'm going to fight in this area, and I'm going to use my shield and my melee weapons to do that. There's not as much encouragement in verticality or in, flinging yourself over large gaps like in Doom Eternal. Which is not to say that there's not any movement at all. There is, there's a shield rush. There is a strafe mechanic. There is running in the game, which, by the way, a hot tip, if you do get this game, make sure you go into the options and turn run as default on, so that your character is never walking and is only ever running. There's I said the shield rush. There are some mechanics with the shield where you like throw it into a particular part of a level and you can pull yourself to it. So there are mobility mechanics in the game, but they're largely used for the purposes of map exploration, which, I 100%ed this game. I got every collectible. I mastered every weapon. I found every secret. I found every toy. I 100%ed Doom: The Dark Ages. And not at any point in my, I don't know, let's see how many hours that take. I can actually check right now how many hours that took. That took 27.8 hours for me to 100% Doom. So it wasn't even that long, but at no point in those 27.8 hours was I bored or not entertained. Like, the mechanics hold up so well, and the way the game plays holds up so well that throughout that entire time, and I could probably play another 20 hours and still not be sick of it, like just play missions over and over again on a higher difficulty. It's just awesome. It's just really good to play. It's a really good, tightly designed experience. The thing that I think makes it really special to me, the thing that stands out, is the way in which it almost feels like a rhythm game with the shield, where when you come up to a boss or a mini-boss, they have certain moves that are parryable with your shield, and if you parry them, typically you inflict some kind of status effect or some kind of effect on them, whether it's electricity or like a stagger or a turret comes out and shoots them, or earthquake, ground pound type thing or something. It kind of ends up feeling like a dance between you and the mini boss or the elite enemy, where they do a move, you block, and the parries have to be timed specifically for the moves that are parryable. So you're like not sitting there holding up the shield the entire time. You're having to, run. It's a combination of running and strafing and knowing the moments to shield. And then when you trigger that, and then you have the opening to be able to get DPS in, and then they go back to it's like a dance with them that you're doing, like a rhythm game dance where you're waiting for the right moment, you're finding your opportunities and your spots. When you get them, you're taking them, and then there's a reset, and then you're doing it again until you've kind of found a way in to be able to get the killing blow. And there's just not like there's not a lot about the other Doom games that feels like that, which makes this a particularly interesting and special Doom experience, because it's the only one of the sort of modern trilogy that feels like it does. And I love that about Doom Dark Ages. I also think the story, look, it's a Doom story. It's not like a piece of art, but it's entertaining, and it's probably the best story they've ever put together. It has actual characters that actual things happen to. There's something that happens in the campaign for this game that I'm not going to spoil, but I'm going to say when it happened, I was like, you have got to be kidding me. They did not. They did not. Did they? They did not. They did. They absolutely did. It goes hard. It goes hard. It knows what it is. It sticks true to, I think, what the core Doom experience is, while introducing a really good new sort of modern take on the franchise. Number 3 is Dynasty Warriors Origins. Now, I wouldn't say I'm like a huge Muso fan. I do like the Dynasty. I do like Warriors games. I like Hyrule Warriors. I liked the Fire Emblem Warriors, and the various games that have come out in both of those lines of games. Dynasty Warriors, of course, Samurai Warriors, Warriors Orochi. I've got the One Piece Warriors game on deck, ready to go. There's even a Dragon Quest one that I want to get to at some point. I tend to like the gameplay loops of these games, but I'm not like a huge super fan. Like I don't have like I see some places online where people are having like very strong opinions about the sash being on a certain place on a certain character's costume from one game to the other, and how that just completely ruins their experience. It's like I'm not that deep into Warriors fandom, but I play him and I like him, and I like the gameplay loops for this genre of game, if you will. Dynasty Warriors Origins is not only is it a good, like, it feels good to play, the combat mechanics, and if you don't know what a Warriors game is, please educate yourself. Just go look up some footage of Dynasty Warriors games. There's like, before this, I think, we got up to nine Empires or something like that. So this is technically like the 10th or 11th Dynasty Warriors game, depending on how you count. This game is the first Dynasty Warriors game where you are playing an original character. You're not like taking Cao Cao or Zhuge Liang or Guan Yu or Zhang Fei or Liu Bei, Sun Jian, Sun Ce. You're not playing those characters, right? You are playing an original character that is going through the Yellow Turban Rebellion and the Three Kingdoms period, from the final battle with the Yellow Turbans all the way up to Chirby in the case of the Wei campaign, and they end in different spots depending on whose story or side you sort of join, but that's the story it tells. And you join, one of the three kingdoms. You join Wei, you join Wu, you join Shu. And to be able to experience that story, which is the same story every Dynasty Warriors game has played, and it's emphasized or de-emphasized certain eras, because the Three Kingdom period is a very long period. It lasted a very long time, and it has a lot of stuff that happened from when it began historically to when it ended historically. That you can sort of focus on. And so all of the games sort of focus on a different timeline within that, and like I said, emphasize or de-emphasize certain aspects of the conflict. But in this game, sort of broadly, you are playing that original character. You're picking one of the kingdoms to sort of support throughout the conflict, and then you're spending time with those characters as they go through that conflict, and, not necessarily resolving the conflict, because, again, the storylines end in different periods. But playing an original character means this is the first Dynasty Warriors Origin games where you really get to observe these other characters that have been in the franchise for 30 years, 30 years, and get their thoughts and their perspectives and their sort of navigation through these events without feeling like you're getting it from the first person perspective. Or just through random dialogue lines, Cao Cao shouts, during a battle. There are actual cutscenes that are actually voice acted, some of them are quite long in this game, that take you through the sort of goings-ons and the things that happened to the various characters that orbited around the central figures of these three kingdoms. Playing through the Wei campaign first, and my character getting quite close with Guojia, who is the sort of chief strategist for Wei toward the beginning of the conflict, and then following him through the rest of the game until he finally passes away in the winter camp, the season prior to the battle at Chirpi, was very affecting. Like, it was very emotional. It was very emotional, especially if you decided, to have the character you play, that original character, invest a lot of time and quote unquote leveling up his sort of bond with that character, which is another thing that exists now in Dynasty Warriors Origins. Is all of these sort of separate characters that are orbiting those central figures of the kingdoms, you have bond levels with them. And when you hit certain bond levels with them, you're unlocking new conversations that either deepen your relationship with them or show or introduce some new aspect of their character or their situation that the game hadn't really sort of touched on before. And some of them are funny, some of them are meant for comedic relief, some of them are quite serious, some of them are representing a more historical perspective, some of them are representing more of the fictional perspective. One might say even the sort of legend or mythical perspective of the Three Kingdoms. And some of them are just character developing. They're attempting to deepen the representation of a character that has been in Dynasty Warriors for so many years, but is maybe just has a surface level of characterization that's been applied to them over 2 decades. And now we're sort of starting to dig a little deeper and get into these characters and their motivations and their fears and their doubts and their hopes for the future, their worries that maybe what they're doing isn't the right thing. There's a lot of cool and interesting stuff that happens story-wise in this game that has just not been a part of other Dynasty Warriors games that I think makes it worth a playthrough. Mechanically, the actual mechanics are awesome. This is one of the few games in recent memories that puts you, quite literally in the center of some historical battles, and you really feel like it's a battle, doing a charge on cavalry with some way cavalry and a general rushing down the hill and thrusting your weapon into the air to sort of encourage your troops on, and then having the yells of everything swell and the music kick in as you slam into their front lines and start hearing the clash of steel and iron against plate armor and stuff like that, is really, it's something, let me tell you. The battles are good. The map, they have an overworld map now that you're using to sort of get around to different battles and different events, you have to actually physically go to where a character is to have a bond conversation with them, and they might not necessarily be the same place you are, at any given time. So it's a really well-designed game, and it took Dynasty Warriors, I think, in a new direction. It's really interesting because recently the designer, producer for Dynasty Warriors Origins said to really fully tell the story, they'll probably need 3 games to get it done. So I hope they don't take a break in between this and the next Dynasty Warriors Origins to do Dynasty Warriors 10, where it's just here's the roster of Wei, Wu, and Shu characters, go kill stuff. I hope they really commit to doing the Warriors Origins sort of trilogy that it sounds like they're thinking they might need, and that they just iterate on it every single game and make it the best that it can be, because if they do that, I think the Warriors franchise is going to come out of this looking real good. Real good. So that's number 3. Number 2, Koei Tecmo just fucking killing it this year, is Warriors Abyss. So this is basically just a Dynasty Warriors, Samurai Warriors, and Koei Tecmo hack and slash roguelike. That's all it is. It's you're picking a character. By the way, there's 120 characters in this fucking game. It's insane. You're picking a character and you're picking their weapon and you're going out there and you're doing runs. You're doing one area and then final boss, and then second area and final boss, and then third area and final boss, and then the real final big baddie boss, and then your run's done. But there's all these systems built up around it. There's meta progression. The way they handle, how you make a build over the course of a run is very interesting. You are selecting other characters as like allies to fight with you during a run, and you activate them based on what slot you put them in. If you've played Dynasty Warriors games before, you know that their combo system is like, let's say you do X, 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 X 5 times in a row, right? Well, if you go X, X, Y, or XY, or XXXY, or XXXXY, that then is, like, that's just the combo for every character. That's how it works. And then, you fill up a meter, it gets full, it flashes yellow, you push B, you do some cool cutscene ultimate, and everyone dies, and you're like, amazing gameplay, absolute cinema. And everyone's happy, like we got what we came here for. But the way it works in Dynasty, or in Warriors Abyss, is when you do the XXY, you actually call out the character that you picked as an ally at some point, and they do their special I'm an ally skill. And so that's how you're kind of doing a build. Every time you finish a room, you're walking up to this tree, and you're picking a new ally, and those allies have ratings in certain skill categories, like, this one will add a strength and a fire. This one will add muso and water. This one has 2 wind and will add defense. And as you're building and adding these points in these different categories, strength, defense, muso, water, fire, air, whatever, you're filling up gauges. And when you hit certain point thresholds, 5 points, 10 points, 20 points, 50 points, you're unlocking a new effect for that particular sort of skill track. And at first, it's like maybe like a little complicated to understand, and there are other mechanics as well that I'm not going to get into here because we're already like almost an hour and a half into this. There are other things that sort of complicate it as well, but all of this ends up contributing to an experience that is one of the most frictionless experiences I had the entire year. Warriors Abyss was I can turn my brain off and just decompress game and not have to worry about locking in for a boss fight, or like, oh man, I really need to go into Arc Raiders and find this like one rare piece. I need to scavenge this one rare component on a map and then worry about surviving the map to get back to base to use it to craft, put my workbench level up to level 3 or whatever. Like, I could just turn Warriors Abyss on, pick a character, pick a weapon, turn my brain off, go in, watch literally tens of thousands of dudes fly across the screen for 20 minutes at a time, and then at the end of it, get the dopamine rush of, like, all the rewards from successfully completing a run, Like, as I get older, these types of experiences are mattering more and more to me because I find there's more for me to be stressful about. There's more that I do stress about. And so having a game that I can just sit down and play and not have to worry about all of that other stuff and still get something from it is really important to me. So I really like that. But it also is just a good game. Like, as these types of games go, I think this is a game that a lot of people are going to overlook. If you are a Dead Cells enjoyer, if you're an Astral Ascent enjoyer, if you're a Skull enjoyer, if you're, those types of, like, Metroidvania roguelikes where you're, like, making a build throughout the course of a run, you owe it to yourself to play Warriors Abyss because it's one of the best ones of those out there that currently exists. It also has a lot of variety in gameplay because there are so many characters in this game. So many characters. They're about to release a DLC here in February that's going to add even more characters and a new game mode as well. So if I was going to say, if you haven't, go check out Warriors Abyss, but I'm guessing a lot of you probably haven't even heard of Warriors Abyss. So go check out Warriors Abyss. It's Koei Tecmo's, kind of hack and slash roguelike, set in the sort of Warriors franchises that they make. It's really good. You even get appearances from the Atelier games in there too, characters from those games. So it reaches across into Ninja Gaiden. There's even Ninja Gaiden characters in Warriors Abyss. So if you're a fan of any of those, games or franchises that Koei Tecmo makes, there's reason for you to check out Warriors Abyss as well. And number one is Clair Obscur Expedition 33. I don't have much to say about Clair Obscur Expedition 33 that hasn't been said. It's a beautiful game. It's a experience that meant a lot to a lot of people. The things that those characters go through, the themes that this game hits on and seeks to sort of represent and embody in its writing and the characterization of its characters. It's one of those games, that comes along maybe every decade or 15 years or so that kind of really makes the community stop and just go, wow, yeah, video games can be this, huh? Like they can be at this level. And I don't think every game needs to be. I don't think every game should. We need the Warriors Abysses and the Sonic Racing Crossworlds just as much as we need experiences like Clair Obscur Expedition 33. But Clair Obscur Expedition 33 as an experience will certainly stick with me far longer and be much more important to me as a gamer and as a person than my time with Sonic Racing Crossworlds will be, of course. It's a really special game. It's a really special game. Like I said, I don't have much to say about it that hasn't already been said. I mean, this swept so many categories at the Game Awards. It sits on so many people's top 10 lists, whether they're big in, I'm not talking about like official sites like IGN or GameSpot. I don't watch or read their top 10 lists. I watch and read top 10 lists of people in the industry whose opinions I respect and who in the past have written for publications. And even on their lists, it's topping out on those lists too. And other people have said far more eloquently than I can, about why this game is so special. I guess just to put a sort of pin in Clair Obscur Expedition 33, the reason it's so special to me is at the end of the day, I think this game is really about how people deal with loss and everything that sort of accompanies and means. And that's loss at every level. It's loss of personal relationships, it's loss of familial relationships, it's loss of a sense of self or place of being in the world. And funny that it came out at the time that it did, because I think there's a lot of people who are going about their existence in the world acutely aware of, or in some cases indirectly smothered by, themes of loss or senses of loss or, whatever current social media fad centered around the loss of something is at any given day or time. But that's what makes it so special to me, is that it helped me work through and think about that in a way that gave me great personal insight and a sort of better perspective on a few things that are going on in the world currently. So that's it, folks. I mean, that's the top 10 list. That's the notables and the top 10 list. Thank you so much for your time and your attention. I appreciate you joining me for another wonderful year. It's January. It's about to be February here in a couple days already. I'm sure 2026, seeing some of the games that are on the slate for this year. Don't worry, I think we'll have plenty more to talk about next year as well. But thank you again for your time and attention. Appreciate you all. Be well and stay safe out there.